Welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. I'm Stuart Wellborn, a British author and former therapist, and each week I sit down with Juan Anichi, a spiritual elder from Turtle Island, to explore the deeper truths behind healing, ceremony, and connection to Source.
Yeah, it was really kind of strange the other day because I was kind of surfing the internet and everything. And I was going from channel to channel on Sunday. The amount of people that are broadcasting religious programs and the things that they're saying really don't make any sense because no matter what they're saying, their audience is saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then when they leave and they go home, they completely forget about the sermon.
That's nothing new.
And, but yet these people are becoming multimillionaires because people are giving them money to be absolved of their sins.
Well, do sins actually exist in your philosophy?
Me, I have a different philosophy when it comes to sins because the whole concept of the seven sins is actually the more of the concept of human emotion, if that makes sense. So if you're dealing with pride, we're dealing with ego. If we're dealing with sloth, we're dealing with sadness. Dealing with gluttony, then with gluttony, it has to deal with our attachments. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, with Hawkins and his consciousness, he talks about pride is one of the highest levels before you get to integrity, and there is a lot of pride in nationalism, isn't there?
The whole idea behind the seven deadly sins is to understand our emotions and what are the negatives and positive effects of those emotions.
Yeah. But
That's basically that's my philosophy when it comes to the seven deadly sins is to understand your emotions so you don't impact a negative effect on others. And that's where the seven deadly sins teach
yeah.
us.
But when you talk about that, who determines what a sin is?
Well, that's why I'm asking you, because we've got Matthew, but he's heading into what, is Christianity. What is indigenous thoughts on sin?
Well, whatever society happens to be in control decides what a sin is against them. What is not right for them could be right for you, but since they're in control, it's a sin. To me, if you follow the philosophy of the indigenous people, the only sin that they recognize is the fact that if you forgot your love for nature, your love for human beings, you know, so the fact that sin itself is determined by what society decides what a sin is in order to control it.
So there were no sins as such, other than not respecting nature, I guess, then. Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying? And
Yeah, a sin is something when you go out and you intentionally try to harm somebody. To me, that is a sin.
Ah,
But if you go out and you do things that are accepted by two individuals or more than two individuals, there is no sin because it's accepted. A sin is something that is not accepted. And then again, like I said, society decides what a sin is, whatever society happens to be in control. The Indians can't own land because it's a sin, because they're atheists. They don't believe in God, which was ridiculous, but yet it was a sin for Native people to do certain things that was normal for them.
well, if we're going on about that kind of period, like pretty much everything was a sin.
Yeah.
Well, the whole concept, if you're talking about indigenous way, what my dad's saying is that it's how you treat life because life is precious, and it's how you destroy that preciousness out of life is what causes a sin, I guess is the best way of putting it.
So
Right?
basically, these people that are making certain pastors and that very rich to try and absolve themselves of sin are just frittering away their money, then, aren't they? Because they're not going to be
Yep.
absolved of sin.
You won't know what type of a life you ended until you basically leave this world and have to basically go before the judgment, because the way of the belief system is that when you are judged, when you leave this world and are judged, the only person that judges you is yourself.
Well, interestingly, because I've just been watching the latest series. What was it? It's on Disney. It's about ancient Egyptians. And their belief was that once you got through the underworld, got into the underworld, there was loads of trials and things that you got to, and then eventually got to Osiris, and he weighed your heart against a feather. And if you had been a good person, then it weighed the same as a feather. But if it went heavy, you were cast into hell, and you were for eternity hung upside down on fire.
And yet society invents a devil. They invent hell in order to actually, how would you say it? They use this concept to enforce their sins so that you do what they want you to do. You're going to hell. Well, what if there's no hell? And it's all based on fear.
Hmm.
Again, it's based on things like, say, for instance, you go out and you drug a female. That's wrong.
Yep.
You're going against your will. But you go to a bar and you find someone and you're both willing and you both agree. Where's the sin?
You won't get no complaints from me from my old
Yeah.
days.
But that's what we have to take a look at, whether or not it's compatible to life itself. If it doesn't offend, then there's no sin. But if you intentionally go out to offend, then what you're doing is you're creating an atmosphere of mistrust. You're creating an atmosphere of hate. So that's where it becomes wrong. So when we look at life, we if we live life in order to not really please other people, because you have to please yourself as well, but if that there's agreement, I guess, could use the word. If there's agreement, where's the sin?
Well, yes, because that's used against the gay community, isn't it? That it's a sin. Yeah, it's two consenting adults that, you know, do what they want to do behind private in the privacy of their own home. So how can that be a sin?
I was in England doing a talk one day. I think there was maybe about 80, 90 people in the audience. And I had talked to a young lady prior to the lecture. And I told her, would you do me a favor? And she said, yeah. I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 19. I said, great. When I'm doing the talk, I'm going to say that you're my girlfriend and that we're planning on getting married. So we sat there, we started, and I said, oh, by the way, I would like to introduce you to Sarah here. You know, I looked over, Sarah is 19 years old. She's my girlfriend, and we're going to be married in a month. The look on people's faces, they were almost ready to get up and walk out. And I sat there, I said, who are you to judge? I said, I did this on purpose to show you where you're at, where your brain is at, and not your heart. I said, because if there's love between us, where is it wrong? But yet you want to judge because she's 19 and I'm an old man. I said, so think about that before you judge people. Find out whether or not they're happy or not together, and then leave it alone.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 54.
That's how old I am now, as of yesterday.
So you can imagine the look on their faces. Then I caught them, but it was a good lesson for them not to judge people.
Plenty of that
People.
going on the internet, and when you see celebrities, for example, what's his name? Oh, I forgot his name now. Leonardo DiCaprio. He's got a young girlfriend, hasn't he? And I'm
Yeah,
guessing he's just a little bit younger than me. He gets judged for that.
quite a few of your actors out there have younger wives.
Well, as you say, who are we to judge them if they are happy? I mean, people will say that they're going with Leonardo because of his money, but that's just an assumption, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know where I was going there. Oh, back to hell then. Did your ancestors have a version of hell then for anybody who, harmed nature then?
What now?
In your tradition, in your indigenous past, was there a version of hell where people were sent if they didn't,
Well, we figured that we were already in purgatory
on Earth?
because we have joy, we have pain. So we would always say we're in purgatory and we have to earn the right to ascend. If we didn't ascend, we could be, in some ways, recycled and given a second chance. If we were terrible, then we went to a black hole where we disappeared. Our energy completely disintegrated and we were no longer an energy. But you really had to be terrible. So I don't think if in the old days you would find very, 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 very few indigenous people in that black hole because most of them followed the rules of nature. They followed the rule of love. And it's just like that's why they were so easily. It's like Christopher Columbus wrote a letter to the Queen of Spain, and there's a copy of it in the museums. In that it said, "We have just found utopia. The people here are kind and generous. They give you everything that you ask for. They give you everything that you don't ask for, but you desire." And they said, "They're very peaceful. They have no army. They have no enemies. They'll be easily conquered and put into slaves." And that was in his letter. I mean, there's proof, that that's what he said when he wrote to the Queen of Spain. So what he did was he took a completely beautiful society and right away enslaved it because power, the power of gold. And there was not that many gold in the island that he was on. All the gold was in South America. But he never even touched South America or North America.
Well, that's interesting with what's going on with Trump and Venezuela that you mentioned that.
Yeah. It's just like I really wonder why is it so important to find out where humans came from? I mean, I was watching a program yesterday saying that they were talking about the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. And they said, how could Christopher Columbus discover something that people came here long before Christopher Columbus? He said, Eric the Red, a Viking, came here before Christopher Columbus. They said Africans came here before Christopher Columbus. And I'm sitting there and saying, when are they going to realize that the footsteps didn't come here? The footsteps left. The center of creation was North America. And we were already advanced. They're starting to find, like I said, we talked about it before, advanced civilizations that were here long before they even knew humans were here. So our theory, again, has always been that the indigenous people were star people. And the reason why they couldn't find evidence that we settled North America is that if you came here for a purpose, and once that purpose was fulfilled, didn't you get back in your spaceship and leave? You didn't settle it. So that's why there's no history of the indigenous people that goes back before they say North America was inhabited.
Your ancestors then, because let's just go on what is the current scientific model, is that all humanity came from some tribes in Africa, and they've found the DNA of one female that they say is partially responsible or something like that. So your lineage is not from that then?
Well, actually, when you look at it, all the lineages, mom and dad, were indigenous people for the world,
Hmm.
and that's why we have same type of makeup, except Native American, the indigenous people, have a different DNA.
Do you?
Yep. We're missing something that all the other humans have. That's why you all sit there, let's say, when you become an alcoholic, you got to go from A, B to C. Well, in indigenous people, the reason why they got to a point where they were alcoholics, they went from A to C. There was no gene that basically was a B. And there's got to be proof, like say for instance, in the Appalachian, they have a group that are known as moon children, moon eyes, that were, according to the story of the indigenous people, they were here long before the humans were.
Right.
And they called them moon people because they couldn't live in the sun. They had to live in caves and they came out at night. But there was a story about that, about the moon people that I was just reading the other day too, that they were considered very special people.
Are these part of the star people or your ancestors or what?
Is what?
No, I say these moon people then, were they part of your ancestors or the star people or something
They
different?
were like they were like advisors to us. So what they were relatives. Let's just put it that way. That they were related to us.
And so what happened to them then?
They're still here.
Oh,
There's still a group in like I think in Kentucky. Except I think they've learned how to adapt to the light now. But in their ancestry they couldn't come out in the light. But they didn't grow teeth.
they didn't, yeah. So they weren't vampires then.
Hmm.
Going back to alcoholism then, because I don't know how true it is, but that's the narrative, is that your ancestors became alcoholics basically from our, well, not my ancestors, because my ancestors stayed in Europe, but um, did you not have alcohol then before Europeans came over?
No, alcohol was introduced.
Oh,
And it's a lot of times too is it got to a point that a lot of indigenous people utilized alcohol as a way of getting out of reality, all the pain that they suffered, of all the things that had been done to them. They started getting alcohol because they live in a different world. And
well, that's what happens with homeless people, isn't it? That,
yeah,
if you're going to be on the street, you need something to numb the pain and take away all the horrors that you've gone through, especially if you had everything and then lost it all, like your ancestors did. But so it's just that if you look at around the world, alcohol, ev I was going to say evolved, but you know, all older civilizations had forms of alcohol. Like mead, the Chinese with their rice. Uh,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
they said the way alcohol came into certain societies was that in the how would you call it, in Israel, before there was in Israel, that the guy was a grape farmer, and he went and he crushed his grape and he put it in a jar and everything, and he had forgotten about it, and it fermented and it became alcohol.
Well, the Egyptians were doing alcohol
Yeah, they had
from
beer.
barley, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had barley beer.
Yeah, because the work people used to think that it was the slaves that made the pyramids, but it's been shown since that they were paid workers and a lot of them, and sometimes they were paid in alcohol and grain.
The other thing that I was going to talk about is the fact that when we look here in society, say even in the world, when people are talking about oppression of people, they will mention every culture that has been oppressed except the indigenous people.
Seems to be that way, yeah.
Yeah, and even here, I tell people, I said, when you hear your speakers, your Hispanic speakers, when you hear the black speakers, when you hear the Asian speakers, when you hear the white speakers, they talk about minority issues. They talk about there's an African problem, there's a Hispanic problem, there's a Chinese problem. They go through all these minorities and they never mention the indigenous people. In our own country, that we once there was 150 million of us, we have become a whatever. And yet, the knowledge to save this world, the indigenous people have. And whether they want to share it now, it's gotten to a point where when I was telling you that there were 6 people that were given the knowledge, 5 of them didn't want to share the knowledge with human beings because they said they didn't deserve it. And in my vision, I was the only one that accepted the task to see if I couldn't convince people to find their pathway and find their pathway that will allow them to be who they really are. So, when I used to do talks, I would ask if there was any black people in the audience who belonged to the black culture, who were black Africans. And then you sit there and you ask them, what race do you belong to? They say, well, I belong to the black race. I belong to the Asian race. I belong to the white race. I belong to the Spanish or Hispanic race. And I said, you're all standing up. So you mention all these races. Now I want to ask you a question. All of you that are human beings and belong to the human race, sit down. Of course, they all sit down. And I said, now that's what we have to look at is the fact that we are a human race. Just because the color of our skin doesn't make us a different race. We all belong to the human race. And I said, when are we going to realize that it's not discrimination against race, it's discrimination against cultures? And then once we can do that, we could probably resolve a hell of a lot of issues. But that's what the indigenous people were told, that when we have the stories of when people left, when they returned, they would represent 3 different colors, but we had to basically take them because they were upside down in their philosophy. And we had the job of turning them upright so that they would once more be reconnected to who they really were. But because society and religion would lose control if people were their own person, they killed 150 million of us so that we would not teach society how to become one with themselves, not with one with whoever's in control. But that philosophy has almost been lost, and I'm probably one of the few that's willing to go ahead and see if people are willing to learn, because if they're not willing to learn, then there's no sense in saving the earth. There's no sense in saving human beings if they're not going to find themselves.
Well, look, if you were to look at the world today in a negative way, the other 5 were right and you were wrong. But hopefully, if you look at what the good that's happening in the world, you'd say that it's worth sticking around one and each year and trying your best because there
Yeah.
are people that do want that future that you're talking
You
about.
said a key word there when you said native way. There was an energy by my ear, and he said, there is no native way. He said there's only a human way. And that made a lot of sense. It's strange how you'd be sitting there talking about something, and all of a sudden something whispers in your ear, and you know they're there, and they're listening. And in some ways, something will say something, and all of a sudden, bing, they say something, and everything is made clear again.
I would freak out if it happened to me because if I suddenly heard a voice, I'd be like, "What the fuck?
Yeah,
Where'd that come from?"
yeah. You sit there, or sometimes you hear buzzing in your ear. And I always tell people if you hear buzzing in your ear, I can't remember. I think it's in your left ear. Then what you do is you put a little bit of sage in there. And what happens is that the energies have a language that is so fast that it sounds like a mosquito. But when you put the sage in there, it felt like a filter, and all of a sudden you can hear words.
Ooh. Either that or it is a mosquito.
Yeah. But there's all kinds of little things that people should already know, but unfortunately they don't
Such as?
because they're so they're not attached to the understanding of their energy. They're only attached to the energy of their brain, what they can see, what they can feel, what they can think. Because if I would tell the doctors what I see at night sometimes, or when I wake up, I'd probably be over in one of those little white jackets sitting in the hospital
Yeah.
because they don't want to believe in this because it's a threat to them. It's a threat to society, for people to have information coming from things that they can see, but other people can't see.
Well, we've been ingrained, haven't we, to see people that like that as being mad. And so people like yourself, if they're seeing visions and all that, are going to be afraid to come forward for the same reason that they'll end up in a little padded cell in a nice jacket that's got like sleeves tied around your back.
Well, again, society makes the rules. They don't accept people for who they are. It's just like Trump trying to put all the guy with autism. He wants to put them all in the hospital.
Wants to put who in the hospital, sorry?
Trump,
No,
Trump
who
wants
does he want to?
autism.
Oh,
He
autism. Is
wants,
that what he wants to do now?
yeah, he said it's caused by Tylenol, so therefore he said we need to confine him.
Oh, I knew about the Tylenol, but I didn't know he wanted to confine them.
It's just that everything is getting so crazy in this world. I think in some ways the eyes are starting to open, and there's a lot more people who were blinded are finally starting to see a little bit of light about what Trump is trying to do.
Let's hope to see it before it's too late, though, because it worries me because you are the most powerful nation on earth. Well, America is. If he goes the route, not saying he will, but if he goes the route of like Hitler being a total fascist dictator, who's going to stand up to America?
Yeah, but you need to take a look at Hitler's strategy, and you will find out that Trump follows Hitler's book word for word. Now, what did Hitler utilize to gain the trust of the people, to get the people to hate?
Well, there's multiple things, but
Well, the main thing
blaming
was
people.
the Jewish.
Yeah.
And what did he have? He had his brown shirts that went out and started arresting the Jewish people. What is Trump doing? He has his ICE.
Yes.
He has his red caps. And what are they doing? They're going out and they're arresting immigrants, even if they're legal citizens. He's arresting everybody to get the people to upright. So they protest against him and they finally uprise. Now he has the excuse to use the army.
So what can you do about it though?
Well, people have to wise up. The way you get rid of them is you vote them out. Get him out of office.
But he's even, well, I only saw a bit on the BBC News website that he hasn't ruled out going through a third term, even though it's unconstitutional, I believe.
And he wants a third term. But the people who have the power to correct everything that's being done have seemed to basically crawl into a hole because Congress can impeach him. They can get rid of him. They can put him in jail. But yet again, they're so afraid. Even the Supreme Court is afraid of him. And I don't understand how people can be afraid of a man, one man, unless he has the power of the dark side.
Do you think he has?
Probably doesn't, but that's what was told and foretold that if an individual has control of the dark side, that will mean one day it will be destroyed. And all the people that follow that dark side will be destroyed. And right now, when you look at it, probably about 80% of the people in the world will be destroyed.
I've got to mention this because you're talking about Hitler and his strategy. I Have you ever watched Babylon 5, the sci-fi
Yeah,
series?
yeah,
He just reminds me of President Clark and like his tactics.
yeah. The movies and this, like the series and everything, are out there, and they have a message. But who sees the message? They see,
Yeah.
oh, it's entertainment. It's entertainment. They don't see the underlying message that it's saying.
Yes, exactly. Because if you are familiar with it, then the Membari were the spiritual people, and they talked about we are the universe trying to work itself out and things like that in it. Um, Loads of great wisdom in Babylon 5 if you look for it. But then there's the warnings there as well. You know, how the Ministry of what was they called now? Oh, Ministry of Truth, wasn't it, or something like that? And it basically like ice and all those kind of things coming in Babylon 5. And then
Yeah,
the worst bit though was President Clark when he knew it was all going wrong and Captain Sheridan's coming, like turned the defenses against planet Earth, didn't he? And he was going to
yeah,
basically the good scorched Earth, and you just think Trump's got that same power.
yeah. He does. Yeah, 'cause it's kind of strange, like you follow Spartacus.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they sit there and they kill somebody and they say, "Oh, apologies," but then gratitude. Two famous words in there is apology and gratitude. But you can do anything you want as long as you apologize and there's gratitude. uh, when I watch it, the violence in that in Spartacus is unbelievable.
Yes, yes. Although, okay, I'm going to talk about a pervy scene, really, but what's the name who played Xena Warrior Princess? Lucy Lawless
Yeah,
and Jamie Murray. That was just a scene, there was them two and the Scottish guy, and that
yeah,
was a scene that you never thought you'd see in your life. Lucy Lawless naked with another woman.
yeah. And then she became Xena,
No,
the
this was
warrior
after
princess.
Xena. She was then in Ash versus Evil Dead, but
She fell from grace.
right,
But
we've only got a couple of minutes left. I want to ask a quick question. Rewinding when you're on about people coming to America.
uh,
Obviously, Columbus came over and, started all the horrendous things that happened to the people that live there. You mentioned, was it Eric the Red came over?
yep.
What was the interactions like with the Vikings then?
Well, the Vikings too, and even the Welsh.
The Welsh,
The Welsh were here actually even before Eric the Red.
really?
Yep. And there's a story where this Welsh man came over here and we were going to convert the indigenous people, and they captured him and they sentenced him to death. And he came and he got on his knees and he begged for mercy. And the chief came out and he was begging for mercy. And the chief talked to him in Welsh. He was shocked because and then the Mandans, they do a ceremony called the pole dance, which was practiced in Wales.
All right.
It's an ancient ceremony. So we always say that the Mandans basically were really the Welsh, the ancestors of the Welsh.
So are we talking pre-Christian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were
So
talking way back, way before Christopher Columbus and everything, you know. In fact, in North Dakota, we have a town called St. John's, North Dakota. Just north of it, towards Canada, they found Roman and Viking swords.
really Roman as well.
The Roman swords were taken by the Vikings.
Ah, yeah.
See, so they settled Newfoundland, Greenland, and they even came to. And then if you look at their ancient stories, you will see they talk about a land that is so perfect. It's like they found heaven, Utopia, and they were talking about North America.
So was the relationship between your ancestors and the Vikings friendly then?
Well, some of the tribes intermingled, just like in the Mandan. Every once in a while, there's a blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby born, and both the mom and the dad look at each other and said, "Okay, what? Who jumped the fence?" But you know, in the original stories, though, when you really look at what we call about the original indigenous stories, you will find events that describe visitors and how we went over there and then they came back, because how did they know we existed if they didn't come from here in the first place? But in their stories and everything, they always seen it. It was always strange to me that Astrodamus never seen us.
Mm.
These visions, he never seen the indigenous people once. That's
Something
what
we may have to talk about next week because we are probably about 30 seconds till we get cut off.
Oh, okay.
But
So that's
that was fascinating. Mm.
Yeah, because Matthew's getting Nancy here, so he must have something to say next week.
What? No, no.
We'll find out next week. Thank you for
We'll
tonight
find out.
because we're going to get
Yeah.
cut off any second now.
I'll come back with the rest of the story next week.
Thanks for listening to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. If you'd like to ask Wananichi a question, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. The link will be in the description. And don't forget, you can download a powerful guided meditation for free at humancircleoflife.com.